What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? First day of work. He walks in, says "What the frick is up, dumbass?" to the guy that parked next to, didn't touch, his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for, on visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. I want to see the interest rate for a first day of work loan. Go check out any dealer near a military base. I work construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back, took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. They quit a construction job to steal, and split the cash from a few coffee orders? I imagine if they had stayed and worked a full day they would have earned more than that. Yeah, but it's hard work. This was a while ago at my old job. New guy gets hired as a busboy. He was super annoying and tried to insert himself into everyone's conversation whether they wanted him there or not. It only took a couple of hours for the whole restaurant to hate him. I was working the bar and he kept eating the bar fruit. I personally didn't care, but the manager did. Manager comes over and tells him to stop eating the fruit. He looks the manager in the eye and eats another piece of fruit. Manager says "Really?" followed by "Come with me to the office." New guy promptly replies with "Alright man, calm down. I can tell you got that big dong energy for a good reason," followed with cliche wink and nudge from his elbow, in front of me and like 4 other employees. I wanted to slam my face into the ice bin. It was so cringy to witness. He promptly walked out the front door 10 minutes later without his uniform on anymore. The worst thing about it was the manager was an insanely laid-back guy. Hell, the whole restaurant was insanely laid back. You really had to try hard to get fired from this place. Had he not thrown in that big dong line, I'm almost positive he would have just gotten a slap on the wrist and kept the job. "You got that big dong energy" absolutely kills me. Why would you ever say that to anyone, let alone your boss? "You don't tell me what to do. You're a woman." To his trainer. Lasted until management came in that morning and heard about it. I heard a guy say that in his job interview. He was quite desperate for a job. The interviewer was the general manager, and she just got up and left him sitting there. He sat there for a bit before he came to ask what was going on, and she said that she's the GM, and if he won't listen to women there's no point in her saying anything else. I would have told you to go home, but I thought you would prefer to receive the message through my absence. Worked in a grocery store for a while. New guy took lobster out of the tank and removed the elastic bands on its claws, then proceeded to put it back in the tank. The thing murdered all the other lobsters in the tank. I was halfway expecting a theft attempt by putting said live and free lobster down his pants. I thought he was gonna chase coworkers with it. Not gonna lie, I'd find that funny. New guy started on Monday and was gone by Friday. The guy hit some racking in the warehouse with the forklift. Boss saw him do it, and the guy decided to lie about it when asked if he knew what happened. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a coworker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Did this young man happen to win the Heisman Trophy? He was intercepted by the closing manager, so yeah, it was probably him. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing, and he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. Guy got hired, went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor, he disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as frick on like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle, staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30+ minutes. Coworker quit his job. Great job, great pay, great benefits to work in a radio repair place. I mean, gotta do what you love, and he was also a big radio enthusiast. Got fired the first day on the job for stealing parts for his own radios at home. Took him over a year to get back with us. Surprised they rehired him. He then got fired for being a security risk about a year or so later. Christ, he could have just asked if he could rummage through the e-waste bins. Most places are fine with it at growing legs. corporate chain restaurant, new server, aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms, with other guests clearly in there using the urinal, and started doing lines of blow-off on the edge of the sink. Why not just do it in the back with the cooking staff like everyone else? Cause then you might get asked to share. I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first what the frick, but I went with it, because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch and this dude was in my office chair zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never use the temp agency again. Air duster, like most inhalants, can kill you in a snap. Lucky you found an idiot and not a corpse. 5 days. My boss hired an executive chef. Dude didn't even know how to make a quesadilla. Well duh. You pick those in the wild. Fresh quesadillas are the best quesadillas. Guy slept through 2 meetings on his first day. The second meeting he started snoring. One of our better programmers sleeps through meetings regularly. Partially passive-aggressive bullet, partly because he works so many hours that he needs getting an occasional break from the stress. At one company, the best hardware design engineer left every day right at 5 o'clock, and usually took a short nap after lunch, too. But when he was working, he outproduced the other engineers and delivered better designs, too. I followed my boss one day when he went to ask him a question. The boss saw he had his head down on his folded arms, turned to me with his finger on his lips, and quietly backed out and closed his office door. My old boss always told me that if you weren't punctual, you better be damn good at something else. Knew a very senior engineer who would routinely do this, but when you threw a question at him, he answered it without even opening his eyes. Not sure how he managed that. Guy had been working a few days at a barn, decided to smoke right by bales of hay. Manager saw him and fired him right on the spot. At farms, you don't frick around with fire. In college I worked on software for a company that owned a circa million square foot warehouse full of bales of cotton a guy was caught smoking in. They roughed him up a bit. I thought that was going too far until a company we sold to had a huge fire that was a 42-alarm fire. A big fire in the city might be, for example, a 3-alarm fire where 3 different departments respond. They had 42 respond, including 2 different fire departments from railroads. The guy I worked with there said their 200,000-gallon fire pond was emptied without even making a dent in the fire. I've heard cotton factories are, or at least used to be, the worst places to smoke, because not only do they have this highly flammable material, but it gets in the air and so the whole place can go up in flames basically instantaneously. Grain elevators too. Grain elevators don't FWOM, they just go boom. A man was hired to do stock at a tea store that sold lots of delicate china. Manager walked into the back on his like 3rd day and saw him just throwing boxes of teacups and teapots. Instantly fired. Wasn't a bull disguised as a man, was he? A minotaur? As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a new girl was fired on the spot for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. Was this on purpose or accident? Purposely. Do you know where she is now? Working for Comcast customer service. Oh, I've got one for this. I was hired to do tech support in a call center. On our first day of training there were about 30 of us in a room and we each had our own computer. The instructor said it was okay to use the computer for personal stuff during downtime, but the only rules were no games and no peeing. One guy got fired before lunchtime because he just couldn't resist the peeing. One guy got fired before lunchtime because he just couldn't resist the peeing. Kids, this is what an actual peeing addiction looks like. I was teaching a class of 13-year-olds, year 8s. One of the boys tried accessing peeing, but didn't realize the Wi-Fi login for the Chromebooks was his own unique ID, and everything is monitored. His parents were split, and unfortunately this really did not help their relationships. His laptop was confiscated upon his arrival home for a whole week. He was distraught. Even if there is no login on a web browser and you use the Wi-Fi login on the bottom right of your screen, your activity is most certainly tracked at school. About 35 minutes. I hired a guy to work for me as quality inspector for merchandise headed to Walmart and Target. He bragged about everything he stole from his last job during training and how they paid him more than I did. Well, I'm not holding him back from all that money, so I had some big guys escort him off the property. Had a guy say similar things about his old job once, and that they were really positive about him. Manager was happy to hear he would not be without a job for long when he fired him. Why even say stuff like that? Day 1 of training. Within the 6th hour of 8-hour shift. Worked in an old crank handle service elevator at a private residential condominium. 4 very wealthy people. We told him just shut up and stare straight ahead. Don't speak unless spoken to. Cause old rich people are mean and don't care about you. Well, what's the new guy do? Starts a conversation right away and asks the resident, how much money do you make? 3 hours into the first shift. Guy lost it serving an annoying customer in a grocery shop. Throw a cabbage at her. The manager came and told him to go home cause he finished there. He wasn't surprised. I was standing next to him. It was an entertaining day. Did she deserve the cabbage? As a grocery store employee, they all deserve the cabbage. My buddy worked at a grocery store deli and it's the reason I never want to work at a deli. Put me off working food service for life. I consider it a valuable lesson. Had I gone for line cook, I imagine the job would have smoked my ass. As is, slicing deli meats, mixing salads, and babysitting fryers sucked ass enough I never want to do it again. In that way, I consider it a valuable experience. I did like making the sandwiches for the firefighters. They really appreciated it. And it felt like I was doing something right. Wraps though? Every customer who ordered a wrap was a freaking AOL. Coworker. Smoked like every 40 minutes for like 10 minutes. Then asked the boss if he could leave an hour early because he didn't take his lunch break. As my boss said, sure you can, but you don't need to come back. Where I worked, my boss gave benefits for workers who didn't smoke. This happened because smoking is really popular in my state. 4 or so hours. When I was 18, I got a job at a grocery store, along with 3 others. We all started training together. On the first day we were training in the evening, and one girl asked to go home. She said her head hurt. They said fine. She clocked out, went to grab a grocery cart and started filling it with beer and liquor. The store manager walked over and asked her if she was having a party. She said yes, didn't even try to come up with an excuse. Just, yeah, I am. So I needed to leave early on my first day. Basically, he fired her. This one just gets me, because all she had to do was go to a different store. There had to be another store, liquor store nearby. All she had to do is have a different brand too. Do I still get the employee discount? I like to think the party was to celebrate her getting a job, and she had to spend the whole time explaining to incredulous attendees just how freaking stupid she is. This was just a summer job at a fast food place. We had a new girl start and within 2 days it was apparent she was an idiot and everyone knew that. You could already see the manager questioning his decision. Then on her 3rd day of work she said she couldn't come in because her mom was in a car accident and in the hospital. Turns out this is an easy thing to disprove in a relatively small town. Semi-related, but back in high school I tried to call out by saying I had car trouble and it had to be towed. My boss then says, oh no problem. I have to pick up my daughter from practice who is out your way anyway so I can give you a ride. I ended up driving my car out behind my house and parked it on the lawn to hide it and took his ride. Pretty awkward conversation with my parents later about why my car was in their backyard and my boss was dropping me off. Pretty itty thing to lie about, let alone just to get out of work. And on your 3rd. He didn't show up the first day, 2nd day, or 3rd day. I had to work a double shift for 3 days straight. Not fun. I answered the phone when he finally called in on the 4th day. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been in Orlando. My parents paid for a small vacation as a reward for getting the job. Would it be okay to start next week, instead of this week? What better way to celebrate the end of unemployment than taking a little break from work? I worked at a hotel. A good housekeeper got her cousin hired so they had a party. Cousin was found asleep in a bed on her first day. Fired instantly. Took me a sec to realize it was a bed at the hotel and not her bed. But wouldn't that just be something? You're fired. What? Why? It's my first day. We got some disturbing news that you sleep during your off hours and we just can't have that type of person in this company. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically, we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some downhole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned the night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't. Hence taking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired, but it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto the program, and I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van, and despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, Buddy just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February. Too good for the drillers maybe. LOL, why wasn't his truck even turned on? Where I live, work vehicles don't even get shut off during February. Good question. The driller van was huge too. It was essentially a cube van on treads. The propane heater made it nice and toasty in there. I didn't even need to wear my jacket back there. Plus they backed the van right up to the back of the rig, because it's where they kept all their rods and stuff. So it gave you a front row seat to the drilling. We did similar work. There's always one engineer or scientist who's too cool for school, but I loved hanging out with the drillers. Those guys know how to stay comfortable in extreme conditions. Also, they tended to be really nice. And sometimes they brought a crib board. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.